Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about my 72 hours in the Haunted House TBR. I'll be honest with you guys, this TBR is way too long. I don't know what I was thinking when I was compiling all of these books together because there's no way I'm getting to the 35 books that are currently on my could be read. So this is more of an MBR than a TBR. Might be read. I have something for every prompt, or at least I tried to, so that I've got plenty of different options if things roll up. I know that some people are going to be doing just thriller or just horror wheel. I may do a little bit of both, so I tried to give myself a few options for the thriller wheel as well. Stay tuned for the end of this video and I'm going to give you 9 or 10 recommendations of books that I have read that I think you might enjoy for this readathon. And if you have no clue what I'm talking about, I will link my announcement video down in the description box below. But basically for 72 hours, we're going to be spinning a wheel for prompts and reading either thriller or horror books. Okay, so since there are 35 books on this list, we're going to rapid fire this and we're just going to jump on in. The first book that I might be reading is Spite House by John Compton. This one I think is going to fit for the gothic, psychological, supernatural, or haunted house prompts on the wheel. And it says it is a terrifying gothic thriller about grief and death and the depths of a father's love. And it's for fans of The Babadook meets A Head Full of Ghosts. And I really enjoyed The Head Full of Ghosts and I liked The Babadook as well. So curious, hopeful, fingers crossed. It's also, I think, the Literally Dead book club pick for an upcoming month, so that'll work out really well. Next up we have Suicide Forest by Jeremy Bates. This is one of the World's Scariest Places books and there's a bunch of them on KU. I think it's about a group that goes into this scariest forest ever in Japan and they all start dying. I think this is gonna fit for the supernatural and a spooky word because I'm counting suicide as a spooky word. Then we have The Laws of the Skies by I believe Curtis Gregory. I think this is gonna fit for potentially the slasher prompt and then the supernatural prompt. It is a fairy tale gone horribly wrong. It says it's Winnie the Pooh meets the Blair Witch Project in this very grown-up tale of a camping trip gone horribly wrong. It has creepy children. I'm excited for it. There's actually 36 books on this list because I forgot one, and that is Blanky by Keelan Patrick Burke. There's going to be several from this author on this list. It is super short. It's about a guy that's daughter dies and her blanket just keeps showing back up in her room and he can hear cries of children in the background. I think this is going to count for like psychological, maybe a little bit of supernatural, not 100% sure what other prompts, but I'm excited to buddy read it, hopefully with Cassidy. So that leads me into the other Keelan Patrick Burke. I believe it's called Guest, and I want to say that it may be a collection of short stories, but from what I can tell, this one's probably going to hit the snowy setting, supernatural, and psychological prompts. I will say that supernatural and psychological seem to be the easiest two for me to hit. I believe it has a small town setting, and this guy is trying to get away from the death of someone that he loved, and he is caught in a ferocious winter storm. And it says that the small yellow tour bus bound for the Windcrest Hotel is soon going to find itself under siege of more than just the storm. Sounds interesting. It hits that snowy setting prompt. I'm excited for it. Then we have Below by Laurel Hightower. This is one that I actually heard from Gabby Reads, and I think it's going to hit the psychological, also snowy setting and supernatural prompts. This one is a very short story about how far would you go to help a stranger. This woman gets caught up in some kind of like electrical storm and she has to put herself in the trust of a charismatic truck driver, but there's an unexplainable creature with haunting red eyes that gets between them and forces her to make one of the toughest decisions of her life. Sounds very psychological. I think Abby really enjoyed it, so we're gonna hopefully get to that one. And honestly, the cover is really creepy. I want to say it might be a Mothman retelling, but don't quote me on that. Next up, we have another KU book that Cassidy recommended to me, and that is Video Night by Adam Caesar. I've heard it has some language that some people may not really enjoy, but it's just kind of the times, that horror vibe. Anyway, I think that this one could cover the potentially slasher prompt as well as creature feature and supernatural. And it's about a body-snatching alien invasion. I think it may be a horror movie turned real life. I don't know. Cassidy really enjoyed it, so I'm hopeful that I can get to that one as well. Then we have Wonderland by Jennifer Hilliard. This one I think is going to go more in the thriller wheel than the horror wheel, so it would fit probably the psychological, isolated setting, crime and police, and potentially even mystery. It is about something gone horribly wrong at a amusement park or carnival, and it sounds really good. Kaylee, I think, just gave it 5 stars. Gabby just read it for the book troop, and I really want to get to it. Then we have Stranded by Stuart James. This one is about a family that's on their way home from the airport, but for some reason they get stopped on the side of the road and there is a psychopath on the loose. Can they survive the night? I think that this one is probably going to hit mostly just the psychological prompt, but it's short, it's on KU, it sounded good, so I wanted to put it on the list. Next up, we have The Forgotten Child by Melissa Erin Jackson. I think this is going to hit the supernatural prompt. And the tagline says, "The dead can speak, they need her to listen." It's about a girl that releases a malevolent spirit from a Ouija board when she's 13 years old, and a spirit of a little boy contacts her of a child who went missing and was never found in 1973. So it may be a little bit of a mystery, but I do think it leans more horror. There are some warnings for adult language, sexual situations, and discussions of sexual assault, so just be aware of that if you decide to pick this one up. Then we have a creature feature, which is Merfolk by Jeremy Bates, I believe. This is the same author that did Suicide Forest, but this is his other collection, which is The World's Scariest Legends. It's the fourth one, but from what I can tell, you really don't have to read those in any kind of order. Obviously, it's about killer mermaids. I read Into the Drowning Deep a couple of years ago. Loved that one. Really want to read some more about killer mermaids. Then we have The Murders of Molly Southbourne, which is by Tade Thompson. I've heard some really good things about this one. I think it's going to hit the spooky word and sci-fi prompts. I also need another, I need this for the R Fantasy Bingo board as well, so that'll be really good to kind of hit two birds with one stone. But this one is about a woman, I think, that every time she bleeds, another copy of herself is made and they're out to kill her. I've heard really good things about it. Kayla from Books and Lala really enjoyed it, so I'm excited to give this one a go. Then we have Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. I have heard that this one is very gut-wrenching emotionally. I think it's going to hit these psychological and maybe supernatural prompts. And it just says, how far would you go to bring back someone that you loved? Like I said, I've heard this one that is gut-wrenching, but I've also heard some amazing things about it, so I'm hopeful that I can get to this one during the 72 hours. Then we have The Taster by Mark Latoya. I think this one is just going to hit the supernatural prompt, and it is about a wine cellar, I believe. It's a labyrinth cellar, a priceless wine collection, and a vengeful spirit who guards it for eternity. If you love thrilling suspense and occult stories packed with hair-raising suspense and tension, then you'll not want to miss The Taster. I don't know, there's just something about that title that really kind of weirds me out a little bit. Labyrinths are really cool. I like wine, so why not? Then we have The Werewolf, which is a short story by Almakatsu. This one I think it just came out. No, it came out on September 27th. I've not heard very many people talk about it. I think I've tried an Almakatsu before and didn't love it, but this one is super short, so I figured why not give it a try. It is historical. It's set in Germany, 1945 during the Second World War. It's about a guy who is bullied into joining the guerrilla resistance, and he is talked into it by talks of power, brutality, and the ancestral lore werewolves. And I think that he has to do some really despicable things, and it talks about like humanity. Was he a monster all along, or was he created to be this monster by participating in these activities? I think it's going to be one of those kind of psychological horrors. I'm not sure whether it's going to count for creature feature or not. I think it'll count for psychological, and then I'm counting a werewolf as a spooky word. Then we have one that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to say correctly, and that is Sekulina by Philip Ferrasi. I think I just completely butchered that. Anyway, I think this is going to hit the creature feature prompt. It's hopefully going to scratch the water horror itch that I've been having. This cover is super creepy. I mean, just look at that cover. But it's about guys that are just released from prison and they charter a fishing boat. But once they get out to sea, a mutant species is trying to terrorize the vessel and its occupants. Sounds really interesting. I'm curious as to what this terrifying ancestral creature is, because it doesn't sound like mermaids. Then we have a short story that I've had my eye on, which is Final Girls by Mira Grant. I have not always loved Shauna McGuire, her other pen name, but I love her under the pen name Mira Grant, so I'm really excited to read this one. It's a sci-fi horror, and it says, what if you could fix the worst part of yourself by confronting your worst fears? It's about a doctor and a virtual reality I believe that they've created to try to get people over phobias. It sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to read more from Mira Grant. I'm also potentially going to be reading Square Cubed, which is another short story by her that should hit the sci-fi prompt. I'm not 100% sure if it's horror, but everything else that Mira Grant has written has been sci-fi horror, so I'm going to assume so. Then, of course, we have to throw in some Darcy coats. You didn't think I was going to go this entire video without talking about Darcy coats, right? So a couple of them that I am potentially going to hit are Voices in the Snow. This one obviously is going to hit the snowy setting, as well as Cozy. All of hers I think will hit the Cozy prompt, which is something that I thought I was really going to struggle with. Dead Lake, which is supernatural and cozy. I could also potentially do Fullcroft Ghost, which is a haunted house and cozy. And then she also has Small Horrors, which is a collection of short stories, which will also hit supernatural and cozy. So there are a lot of different options as far as Darcy Coates goes, and I'm really excited to read more from her. I have enjoyed pretty much everything that I've read, and she's just absolutely perfect for this readathon. Quick, suspenseful, short, just I highly recommend. Then we have one that has sounded really good and super creepy, and that is Ghost Eaters by Clay McLeod Kaplan. I'm also potentially going to be doing Whisper Down the Lane by Clay McLeod Kaplan. Both of these are going to hit the supernatural prompt. Ghost Eaters I think can do spooky word and psychological as well. I've heard really good things about both of these. I think that Whisper Down the Lane is a cult-based type thing and it's on Audible Plus, whereas Ghost Eaters is more of a ghost story and about loss and grief. And it's not Clay McLeod, Clay Chapman, not Kaplan. For some reason it was really hard for me to get out, but I wanted to make sure I had the right author name. We're getting there. Bear with me. We're going to keep going. The next one is Sign Here by Claudia Lux. This is one that just came out, I think at the very, very end of last year. It's about a guy that works down in hell and he's trying to recruit people into hell. I think this would work really well for the cozy and comedy prompts. Then we have What Lives in the Woods by Lindsay Curry. This is a middle grade horror and would definitely fit the cozy and supernatural prompts. Read Scritch Scratch, I think 2 years ago, and it really freaked me out, so I'm excited to potentially read more from Lindsay Curry, and that'll just be a really quick palate cleanser if some of the more adult stuff is a little overwhelming. Then we have Suburban Hell by Maureen Kimmer. Obviously, this is kind of what it sounds like. I think it's about somebody that is living in the suburbs, and it's actually in hell. I've heard mixed things about this one, but I've heard it's funny and a good time. Obviously, that would hit the comedy, cozy, and spooky word prompts. Then we have Wayward Pines by Blake Crouch, one of the few that I actually own. This was gifted to me by Kaylee. This one's going to go in the thriller, I think, side of things. And it is probably going to hit police and crime procedural as well as potentially sci-fi. I've read a lot of Blake Crouch, really enjoyed his stuff, and I've been excited to get to this one. It's about a Secret Service agent who arrives in Wayward Pines and he's looking for 2 missing agents, but he's in an accident and nobody believes who he says he is and he can't get out of the town. Then we have These Fleeting Shadows by Kate Alice Marshall, as well as potentially What Lives in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. These Fleeting Shadows is part of her young adult. It's not a series. She doesn't even call it companion novels, but they all do kind of tie in together. And it sometimes has some mixed media. I believe it is a haunted house story. And then it will also count for the psychological prompt. And then we have Little Eve by Catriona Ward. I really, really, really enjoyed Last House on Needless Street last year. Read Sundial just recently. I'll link the vlog up above, and just enjoyed it but didn't love it. The payoff wasn't as good. This is a reprint of one of her older books. I think it is about a cult, and so I'm really excited to get to it. It's not very long and I need to get to it. This one is probably going to hit the psychological prompt. I don't know that there was anything else that this one would hit though. Then we have The Quiet Tenant by Clements McCallan. I probably just butchered that. This one is also going to go in the thriller and it can hit psychological or isolated setting. It's a psychological thriller about a serial killer, and it is the story narrated by his 13-year-old daughter, his girlfriend, and the one victim that he spared. Sounds really interesting. That's a different way of telling this kind of story, so I really want to give it a try. The next up is a arc that I might be getting to, and that is A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. It's going to be her newest release, and it is a Southern Gothic tale about a woman that goes to take care of her mother and realizes that the house is not as warm and cozy as she thought it was, and there's something more sinister afoot. Obviously, this one is going to hit the haunted house prompt, the Gothic prompt, and potentially even the psychological prompt as well. Then we have All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham. This is going to hit the domestic prompt, which I think is the only one on this list that I have so far for domestic. I believe it is about a woman's toddler that goes missing and she cannot sleep literally until he's returned to her. She hasn't slept in a year. Then we have one that I'm terribly sorry has been on a many TBRs at this point, and that is The Drift by CJ Tudor. This is about a woman who I believe wakes up in a snow lift and there's people around her that are dead. It is gonna hit the snowy setting, an isolated setting, as well as the amnesia prompt for a thriller. And then I think last but not least, we have The Couple at Number 9 by Claire Douglas. This one's gonna hit the amnesia and the psychological prompts. There is The Victims, The Investigation, The Witness, The Killer, and The Truth. What happened 30 years ago? Why did no one miss the victims? And what part did her grandmother play? And now is Safi in danger? I do know that it says at one point there is a witness that is increasingly confused and she can't help the police because she can't remember anything, but she's trying to remember something. So I think it might hit the amnesia point. I'm not really sure about that. I also think it potentially could hit domestic. We'll see, but that one's gonna go on the thriller wheel. Okay, everybody, so I think that those are the 36 books that are kind of on my radar for this readathon. Let's quickly go over some things that I've read that I think you might enjoy that you can use for the wheels as well. Okay, first up is one that I don't actually own, and that is Near the Bone by Christina Henry. This is about a woman that is with a man in this cabin and they go out hunting every night and realizes there is a creature stalking the woods. There's a lot more to it than that. There are a lot of trigger warnings, so look up those before reading this book, but that would definitely hit creature features, snowy setting, and psychological. Then we have The Patient by Jason DeWitt. This is about a guy that is in prison and another guy that's going to go and interview him about the boogeyman. It is told kind of like a Reddit article, I believe. Yeah, it's told kind of like a Reddit article or something like that, like a true story, even though it is not. It's really short, it's super creepy, and it would definitely hit the prompts supernatural and psychological. Then we have A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. This one is the only Paul Tremblay that I've read, and I might do Cabin at the End of the World if I get time for it, but this one would count for spooky word, psychological, supernatural, just kind of depends on which wheel you're going to use. It is very heavily inspired by The Exorcist, so if that's gonna bother you, then maybe don't read this one, but I really enjoyed it, about a girl that's kind of going crazy and a documentary that comes in to try to figure out if she is possessed or what is going on with this child. Then we have Rolling in the Deep by Mira Grant. That is the kind of prequel to Into the Drowning Deep. You can read them in either order. Rolling in the Deep is really short, where Into the Drowning Deep is not. Rolling in the Deep would hit a creature feature for sure, and possibly psychological, just depending on how you look at it. It's about this group that goes to make a mockumentary in the Mariana Trench, maybe? I can't remember exactly which. Yeah, the Mariana Trench. And they find things that they did not expect to find. Then we have a super short one, and that is The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. This one would definitely hit psychological. It's about a woman, her stepson. It's kind of creepy, kind of gross. It would definitely hit psychological. Like I said, it is super short. I think it's only like 61 pages, and it's, you know, a short 61 pages. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully you will too. Then we have The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. This is one of my favorites from her. It is a portal fantasy horror. It might count cosmic horror depending on your definition of cosmic horror. It is set in a haunted taxidermy, so maybe if you wanted to consider that a prompt, but it would fit supernatural, sci-fi, comedy, and cozy, I think. It is kind of creepy and really has some disturbing images, but it still kind of has a little bit of that cozy feel. It's about a woman who goes to help her uncle out at his taxidermy shop, and they find a portal to a horrific world. Then we have Stillhouse Lake by Rachel Kane. This one would definitely hit a mystery, domestic, psychological, and in later books, potentially a romantic suspense. It's about a woman and her two children who are on the run from the public after her husband is convicted as a serial killer, and the public does not believe that she and her children had nothing to do with it. I really enjoyed this series. It's just a great time, and the way that it talks about certain topics is a different take, and I really enjoyed it. Then we have The Overnight Guest. This is one that I read at the very beginning of the year last year and absolutely loved. It's set in a couple of different timelines, but the main one is a woman who is writing her story at a snowy cabin, and a dead boy, or so she thinks, shows up in her front yard. It obviously would hit snowy setting, it would hit isolated setting, and I think it would hit like domestic as well. We also have The Unwanted Guest by Sherry Lapina. This one is a murder mystery type thriller. Would hit snowy setting, isolated setting, and mystery for sure. And then a couple of other just rapid fire ones that I didn't have on my list that I wanted to mention. Anything by Darcy Coates. Gallows Hill was really good. I would definitely read Carrow Haunt. I read it all in one sitting. It was a great time, about a haunted house. This one is Haunted Wine Cellar. They would also fit for the cozy prompt. Then we have The Girl in 6E, who is about a webcam girl that isolates herself in her house because she just fantasizes about killing people. Definitely would hit the psychological prompt. I really enjoyed it. We also have The Lost Village by Camilla Stein. This is a translated work about a group that is going to document about this village that all up and just vanished one day and they don't know where anyone went. It's definitely a little bit psychological, maybe a tad one by one, and a little bit supernatural. You probably use this for the thriller or the horror wheel. For domestic, we have My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. I liked this one, didn't absolutely love it. It's about a husband and wife serial killer duo. Definitely fits the domestic prompt. I've heard most people enjoy this that have read it, so would recommend this as well. Devolution by Max Brooks. So this is one of those that would definitely fit for snowy setting and creature feature. I think that the first half of the book is good, the second half of the book not so great. I know it's got some really mixed reviews, but if you're struggling for that prompt, it was fun and quick, I suppose, so I could potentially recommend this one as well. It is about Bigfoot. And I think that those are everything. This video is already way too long. My timestamp says 30 minutes, so hopefully I can whittle that down in editing. I hope you guys are going to join us for the 72 hours in the haunted house. I am super excited. I think it's going to be a great time. There are going to be a tons of sprints. You need to go hit the bell on mine, Cassidy, Rye, Kaylee, Lexi's channels. Everybody is going to be linked down in the description below so that you can be notified whenever sprints are happening. Also, there is a link to the Late Night Crew Discord down in the description as well. It is a public free Discord. We'll be posting recommendations, TBR videos, sprints, all that fun stuff down there, so definitely go check that out. And I think that is everything. Let me know down in the comments what book you are most excited to read and if you're participating in 72 hours in the haunted house. As always, links to my Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads are all in the description box down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you wanna, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!